Episode 3. The first night after the cave was the worst. Shash woke up screaming in his grandmother's small back room. Not from pain. Not exactly. It was the weight inside his chest, like someone had poured molten lead between his ribs and let it cool there. Every breath felt borrowed. Every heartbeat carried an echo that wasn't his. He sat up, drenched in sweat, clutching the faint red scar on his left palm. It didn't hurt anymore. It just pulsed slowly. Like a second, quieter heart. Dida appeared in the doorway holding an oil lamp. "You cried out," she said simply. Shash wiped his face with trembling hands. "Bad dream." She studied him for a long moment. "Some dreams are not dreams," she said. "Some are doors, and once you step through," she trailed off, then turned. "Come. Dawn is near. You should eat before you leave." He left the village 2 days later. He told Dida he had to return to college early for a project. She didn't believe him. But she didn't stop him either. She only pressed a small cloth-wrapped bundle into his hands, dried mango slices and a tiny brass locket that had belonged to his grandfather. "Keep it close," she said. "Sometimes metal remembers better than flesh." On the train back to Kolkata, he stared at his own reflection in the dirty window. Nothing looked different, but everything felt different. That night, when he finally lay down in his own narrow bed in their Salt Lake flat, sleep came like a hammer, and the door opened. Not a normal dream, a realm of endless black marble corridors. Thousands, maybe millions, of arched doorways stretching in every direction, each one framed in faint shifting light. Some doors were cracked open, leaking sounds, war horns, camel bells, steel on steel, monsoon rain on palace roofs. One door glowed brighter than the rest. Red gold, warm, violent. Shash walked toward it without thinking. When he pushed it open, heat, dust, the smell of horse sweat, ghee lamps and iron. He was no longer in his pajamas. He wore rough cotton, stained, patched, sandals, a short curved knife at his belt. His body felt younger. No, just lighter, less broken. He stood on the edge of a dusty trade road. A caravan stretched ahead. 20 bullock carts, 6 horse riders in leather armor, a palanquin in the middle, carried by 8 sweating bearers. Silk banners fluttered weakly in the hot wind. A voice barked behind him. "Boy, stop daydreaming. You're on rear guard today." Shash turned. A man in his late 30s stood there, tall, scarred, one eye milky from an old wound. A longsword rested casually on his shoulder. His beard was braided with small iron rings. "I'm sorry," Shash said automatically. The man snorted. "Name's Vikram. You're the new blade I hired in Pataliputra. Don't remember?" Shash blinked. Then understanding clicked. This wasn't a normal dream. This was the first door. The Magadha Empire, circa 268 BCE. The early years of Ashoka's reign, before the Kalinga War, when he was still consolidating power through trade routes and border patrols. And somehow, Shash had been inserted as a nobody. A sellsword apprentice. Vikram slapped him on the back. Hard enough to make him stumble. "Move. We've got 3 weeks to reach Taxila. Bandits, wolves, rival kingdoms. You die, I don't get paid." Shash nodded mutely. He followed, and so it began, the months that were years. Time didn't move the same way here. In the real world, he woke every morning after exactly 6 hours of sleep, body aching, muscles subtly denser, calluses appearing on his palms where none had been before. In the realm, months passed. Vikram was not kind, but he was honest. He taught Shash how to hold a sword, not the dramatic flourishes of epic films, but the brutal economy of survival. Elbow in, weight on the balls of your feet, never lock your knees. Blade is extension of your arm, not decoration. They practiced at dawn and dusk. Wooden swords first, then blunted steel. Vikram would strike once, hard, and if Shash blocked wrong, the bruise would last days. Again, he learned to listen. The particular squeak of a bowstring being drawn 50 paces away. The soft clink of mail under cloth. He learned to kill animals cleanly. Deer, wild boar, because Vikram believed a man who couldn't butcher his own food had no business holding a blade. And slowly, very slowly, Shash stopped flinching at blood. One evening, after 4 months in realm, 3 real-world nights, Vikram tossed him a real longsword. No ceremony, just, "Tomorrow we enter the Aravalli foothills. Bandits like to wait there. If you survive, maybe I'll start calling you by name." That night Shash dreamed he was back in Kolkata, standing in front of a mirror. His reflection looked older, leaner, eyes harder. He woke with a thin white scar across his left forearm that hadn't been there before. The Caravan Ambush. It happened on the 7th month. The road had narrowed into a rocky gorge, high red cliffs on both sides. Perfect killing ground. They were escorting a high-value caravan, silks, spices, lapis lazuli, and one very important passenger, a royal minister named Devdatta, travelling incognito to negotiate border treaties with the northwest satrapies. 20 royal guards in scaled armour rode alongside Vikram's 6 sellswords. Shash had been promoted. Sort of. He now rode at the rear with 2 other blades, watching for dust clouds. The first arrow came without warning. It punched through the throat of the lead royal guard. He toppled sideways, gurgling. Then the cliffs erupted. 50 bandits, maybe more, swarmed down both sides. Bows first, then spears and curved talwars. Screams, horses rearing, bullock carts tipping. Vikram roared orders. Form circle. Protect the palanquin. Shash's world shrank to the next 10 feet. He parried a spear thrust, barely, then drove his blade into the man's armpit when the attacker overextended. Hot blood sprayed his face. He yanked the sword free and turned. Another bandit, axe raised. Shash ducked, felt the wind of the blow ruffle his hair. Came up with a low slash across the belly. The man folded with a wet scream. He didn't stop to look. There was no time. The fighting became a blur of steel and shouting. He saw Vikram cut down 3 men in 6 heartbeats. Beautiful, terrible economy. He saw one of the other sellswords, young, barely 20, take an arrow through the eye and drop without a sound. He saw royal guards fall one after another, disciplined, brave, but outnumbered. Shash fought until his arms burned and his lungs felt like fire. At some point he realized he was the only one left standing on the rear flank. Vikram was 20 paces away, back to a cart, bleeding from a gash across his forehead, still swinging. Then a spear took him under the ribs. Vikram looked surprised. He looked at Shash. Boy, he rasped. He fell. Silence. Sudden. Terrible. The bandits had won the first wave, 50 down to perhaps 25 still standing. They laughed. They looted bodies. Shash stood alone between them and the palanquin. His left arm hung useless, deep cut across the bicep. Blood soaked his tunic. A shallow gash across his forehead kept dripping into his right eye. His legs trembled. He could barely hold the longsword. The remaining bandits noticed him. One of them, a thick man with a braided beard, grinned. Just 1 pup left. Easy meat. At the other sellswords. At the royal guards who had died protecting a man they barely knew. Something snapped. Not anger, not quite. It was quieter, colder. He raised the longsword, 2-handed, point low. Blood dripped from the blade in slow, fat drops. Around him, faint, almost invisible, a thin shimmer of pale blue light. Not fire, not lightning. Just pressure, like heat rising off sun-baked stone. The 10 bandits slowed. One of them hesitated. Did you see that? Another laughed nervously. It's just the light. He's done. Shash lifted his head. His right eye, clear through the blood, was locked on them. There was no fear in it. Only certainty, the same certainty he'd felt that day in the lane behind the canteen. The birds in the gorge suddenly took flight, dozens of them exploding upward in a shrieking cloud. The lead bandit swallowed. Take him, he growled. They charged. Shash moved. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't practiced perfection. But it was inevitable. He met the first man with a rising cut blade coated in that faint blue shimmer. The talwar the bandit carried parted like wet paper. So did the hand holding it. So did the chest behind it. The man fell in 2 pieces. Shash didn't stop. He spun, low taking the legs out from under the second man, came up inside the third's guard, drove the point through the throat, twisted, pulled free. The fourth tried to flank. Shash felt the movement more than saw it. He stepped sideways, almost lazily, and the longsword licked out. A highline across the eyes, the man dropped clutching his ruined face. The remaining 6 faltered. Shash didn't. He walked forward. Every step left a bloody footprint. Every swing left a body. When the last of the 10 fell, throat open to the bone, the gorge was quiet again. Only the wind, the drip of blood, the creak of the palanquin curtains. Shash stood in the center of the carnage, sword hanging loose at his side, chest heaving. Blood streamed from a dozen cuts. His left arm dangled, his right leg buckled once, then held. He didn't fall. Behind him, slowly, the silk curtain of the palanquin parted. An old woman, Devdatta's widowed mother, looked out first. Her eyes widened. Then Devdatta himself, thin, scholarly, mid-40s, stepped down. He stared at the ring of corpses. At the boy, barely more than a boy, standing in the middle of them. Shash's face was a mask of blood. Only his eyes were clear. Devdutt blinked. For one heartbeat, for less than a heartbeat, he didn't see Shash. He saw a much younger man. Black hair, tied back. Simple armor. A long sword, dripping red. A shoka, before the remorse. Before the edicts, just a prince who had not yet learned mercy. The vision faded. Devdutt exhaled slowly. He stepped forward. "You," his voice cracked. "What is your name, boy?" His voice was hoarse. Almost gone. "Shashank." Devdutt nodded, as though the name carried weight he didn't yet understand. "You saved us. I just didn't run. At the dead sellswords, the dead guards, Vikram's body, then back at Shash. You will come with me to Pataliputra," he said quietly. "The Emperor must hear of this." He was too tired. Behind his eyes, inside his skull, the ruby pulsed once. Soft. Approving. Somewhere far above, in the real world, Shash's sleeping body twitched. A new scar appeared on his left bicep, thin, white, perfectly straight. His mother, passing by his room on her way to the kitchen, paused. She looked at her sleeping son. For just a moment she thought she saw something flicker across his face. Something hard, something ancient. She shook her head, closed the door softly, and went to make tea.